Oh, hey, I hope you're having a lovely day because you are lovely. And if you are not having a lovely day after this conversation, your mood is going to improve a bit because I interviewed Melissa from Clarence. She is the head of communications at Clarence, or I like to say Clarence because I'm European. But I met her at one of their events here in Miami during swim week. And as we started chatting, I was like, I just love your energy. I love your story. And I just want you to be on my podcast. So that's what we're doing. And this episode kind of has like two main topics. The first one is getting a job in advertising, communications, PR. And then the second part is dating and how it is nowadays. And she is from Utah, but she lived in New York for 12 years. And now she moved to Austin. And we kind of compared like, how is it dating in a big city like New York? And Austin is obviously also a big city, but it's such a different vibe there. And then dating in Utah. And a question that I get from you guys all the time, literally all the time, is I am 30 something years old and I want to move to a new city, but I'm afraid of a fresh start. So, this is for all of my girlies who are afraid of a fresh start, but actually, that can be the biggest blessing. I'm a big advocate for moving to a new city if you feel that itch to move. If you feel a similar itch, I highly suggest that you listen to this episode. If you're enjoying Bougie Best Friend, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. It helps the show grow. And just let me know what kind of episodes you like to hear, what kind of guests you want me to bring on. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Melissa, welcome to Bougie Best Friend.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited for this chat. We met at Miami Swim Week at Clarence, the way Europeans say it, or Clarence, the way Americans say it, at Clarence event. You kind of had like a little gifting station, like a beautiful room filled with all the products. And as we started chatting, I'm like, Melissa, you're hilarious. You have to be on my podcast. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we instantly connected. So,
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's get a little background, where you're from. Tell me a little bit about you. What is your role with the company and everything?
yeah, so I'm from Utah originally. Had big dreams to move to New York City as soon as I graduated from university. I went to BYU. And then after years kind of testing out little things in advertising and events and public relations, I found my way to Clarence, and I've been with Clarence since 2019, so for 5 years. And I head up the communications department there.
I feel like a lot of girls have this dream to like be in advertising, move to New York City, and just like climb that corporate ladder. Is that what do you think? Where's that coming from?
Okay, so I've actually given this a lot of thought because that was my dream too. I'm like, why do we all feel like we need a glamorous job in advertising? I think it was years and years of Hollywood glamorizing the
Hmm.
industry. So I think of, Matthew McConaughey in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Things, or even like I grew up, my mom loved Bewitched, and the guy in Bewitched was in advertising. And so it was a very glamorized profession. And so if you moved to New York City, you were in advertising, Madison Avenue. That was the dream. And so I feel like it was very glamorized. And I loved my classes in marketing and advertising. I loved being creative and also very strategic. So it seemed like a natural fit. When I went into the industry, that the kind of conversation too in Hollywood is very advertising agency. So you feel like you need to work at an advertising agency on Madison Avenue. And in reality, I hated the advertising agency life. So it wasn't as glamorous as I thought it was going to be. But what I found is an industry I had no idea existed, which was beauty. And I found that, wow, I love beauty products. I love testing out, trying new things, doing my hair and makeup, and I can have a job in this industry. Like that was amazing. And that was very eye opening for me.
I want to stop here for a second when it comes to working in a career that you think is going to be so glamorized, like the advertising. And I think we all been through that. Like we think that we want something, and then when we get it, we're like, oh, this is not as lovely as I thought. So for those girlies who are listening right now and they think that they want some kind of job, and then maybe they get the job but it's not exactly what they thought it's going to be, do you have any advice, or like what would you say to somebody who kind of got the job of their dreams, but it might not be really for them?
I think you need to stick it out for a year. I think there is a habit of people want things that are easy or comfortable, and you think like oh, like this isn't what I want. This isn't like my dream job, or it's not what I thought it was going to be. And then just being like, I want to move on and do something else. And I think there is something to be said for staying power and like what can you learn from opportunities? I've been very fortunate to have incredible bosses that coached me throughout my career. And so there's always something you can learn from it. So even though I didn't like the very unglamorous job of advertising in the agency, I learned a lot of skills. I learned how to make a presentation and how to create standard like reporting. So like when you're the low man on the totem pole, like your job is not glamorous. And I think it's okay that it's not glamorous. Like, but you learn a lot from why it's not glamorous. So like reporting is not glamorous, but at the end of the day, I'm the one on the front line saying like, this is how this campaign is going. It's going well. It's not going well. And this is why, because I'm in the weeds so much. And so I learned a lot about reporting and I learned about how to make a presentation. So in an agency, you have a client. And so you're trying to like present your client with your ideas and your proposals. And so even though I wasn't coming up with the most amazing ideas because my client was baking soda. Can you imagine how unglamorous that would be? You're like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm working in advertising and my client is Arm & Hammer. But when you think about like Arm & Hammer to everybody in America, I'm pretty sure has an orange box of Arm & Hammer in their fridge and one in their pantry. Mm-hmm. You have a huge opportunity. So like really looking for, instead of like finding the problems, looking for what you can learn from it and how to present some ideas for baking soda in a deck. And actually like as a young junior person, I was fortunate enough my boss would let me present some of my work to the client. And that was a big deal too, just basic professional presentation skills. So I always think that there's something that you can learn from even like the most like meaningless job. There is meaning and there's a reason why somebody's asking you to do it.
No, 100%. I feel like nowadays, not to age ourselves, but those younger generations, the Gen Z crowd, they're not really understanding the concept of having to work super hard and maybe do those shitty jobs. Not shitty, but like jobs that are not so fulfilling. Everybody wants to be the lead or the CEO or whatever. Like, why do you think that is nowadays? Is it TikTok? Like, I think it's TikTok.
I think it came before TikTok. So I definitely am seeing that trend. And it's, for me, mind blowing how people just think you can jump 50 steps ahead.
Yeah.
So when I danced a lot growing up, and I had a dance teacher in high school who would come every year with her senior class. And I did it when I was a senior in high school. We'd go to New York and she would have them, we'd take class at different modern dance studios. We'd go to Broadway shows. It was a very dance immersive trip. And that's when I fell in love with New York City, like just seeing all the opportunities. And so I would see her. Not every single year she'd come to New York City, but I lived there for 12 years. So frequently I would see her on her annual pilgrimage with her class to New York City. And the last time I saw her, she was like, Melissa, you'd be surprised. And again, these are high schoolers and this is pre-pandemic, which I feel like that's when TikTok really took off. She was like, they don't want to go the extra mile. She was like, we had an optional dance class that they could take and they all declined.
Wow.
Like, they all didn't want to do it and they just wanted to go shopping. And I'm like,
with what money?
I think it was happening beforehand, really. But when I would think like every opportunity, you want to soak it up like a sponge. And I just feel like, I mean, I grew up in a household where my parents promoted like working really hard. And so even when I was a babysitter, my mom would say, okay, when, the kids are in bed, they've had their dinner, they're in bed, they're resting, and you're waiting for the parents to come home, like, clean up, make sure there's not a dirty dish in the sink, that the pillows are all organized, that the house is cleaner and more organized than when you left. And so it wasn't just like I did my job and then like, I got my $20 and I left. It was like, going above and beyond. And I've done that my whole career. I did it in school. I lived and died by extra credit, extra projects, just going above and beyond. And that served me very well professionally. I'm a Leo.
Okay, yeah. We talked about that. I'm an Aries. Yeah, that's the fiery spark. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Move on.
Like
continue.
People don't want to go above and beyond, and I feel like maybe it is the Leo in me.
Yeah, Leos do want to be the best.
Yeah, and I feel like you kind of have to want to in order to kind of get to that next level. You can't just do your job. You need to go above and beyond. You don't just clock out at 5. You're like, how can I help? I see that you're still working. Can I help you with anything? And I feel like I was raised to always ask, can I help you? Can I do something? And I feel like in general, people don't do that. They come, they do their job, and then they expect a lot of rewards.
Yeah, and they're like, I'm not paid for that. I'm not gonna do that. Why would I do their job? And it's like, this is not in my job
Exactly.
description. And it's like, you are never gonna, that's not how the real world works. And social media kind of like made it seem like you can just do things overnight. But I want to get back to your days in New York when you just moved. We're gonna get into dating in a bit, but I just want to remember like that mindset. Like, how was that for you when you just moved to New York? You were there for 12 years. I was there for 7. So I feel
Yes.
like we have a lot in common there as well. But tell me, how was New York for you?
It was when I first moved there, I had stars in my eyes. I just felt like it was surreal. And there was no place where you could just meet so many different people and collaborate so much. And it was sort of this focal point of attention. And Fashion Week was there, and I was kind of loving that. And of course, like as I progressed and grew up and like the pandemic hit, I feel like the world kind of shifted. But at the time when I was living there, it was a dream, you know. Everything
Hmm.
was sort of like a little magical. And even though I lived in a shoebox and I shared a
Same.
bedroom and like there was no space when I was first living there, it didn't matter because there were all these fun things going on, and it brought me so much energy.
A lot of girlies write to me and they're like, I have this itch to move somewhere. And I'm always like, you have to do it. If you feel it in your
Yeah.
bones that you have to try something, like it's there for a reason. And I feel like my days in New York really shaped me to the person I am today and taught me so much. Even as we said, like the most insignificant jobs, I would learn how to, like when I was working in restaurants, I just learned how to deal with people, and I would learn how to deal with issues and people being rude and people just like, I learned there better than to learn at like a super high level corporate job. So let's talk a little bit about your beginnings. So you in New York, you were working at an agency, and then how did you end up at Clarence?
I wanted to find my dream job. And my first job wasn't, but I was there for, I actually counted it as a major blessing because to date me, I was ending my internship when the financial crisis happened. So this is 2008. And so most companies were laying people off, if not like at least having a hiring freeze. And so I got in, like luckily, like they extended my internship until a sister company was able to hire me because they won a bank that then like the next week went out of business, was consumed by another bank. So I was very lucky to have a job in New York City at the time. And so I really just soaked it up. Like I was fortunate. And at the time too, I was seeing like waves of people being laid off. And it was very scary to be, you know, junior, just starting out in your career. And that's really the landscape. That's your
Mhm.
world that you're living in. And New York City just changed a lot in those couple of years. But I took night classes because I didn't love my job. I took night classes at FIT, the Fashion Institute, which, you know, it's like I could just keep hating my job or like, let me do something about it. And so while there weren't a lot of job opportunities at the time, I was just taking night classes and soaking stuff up. And I did that for about a year. One of my professors there, and luckily too, that was only like 2 blocks from my office. So it worked out so beautifully. And then she had an internship, an unpaid internship. So I quit my job for an unpaid internship in PR and events because I wanted the opportunity. I'm like, you know what? I've been saving. I live in a tiny place. Like I can do this. And my parents thought I was crazy. I think everybody probably thought I was
Nobody really
crazy, but
understands like when you're in New York and when
what's a
you get
risk?
like an, yeah, it's worth the risk. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking long term, you know. So I started working night shifts in Anthropology, doing this agency work, and I loved it. I had a great time, but like you know, I had no money. I remember I would wear the same sandals like every day, and one of the other interns like teased me one time, and I was like, "It's okay, I will get through
Devil
this
wears
because I'm not going
Prada.
to be this forever," you know. But I still held on to that. But after
Do you
that,
still have the sandals?
I know I don't have the sandals, but I held that on. I held that comment on for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it motivated me more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't make fun of people because you know their parents aren't footing their bills. You know, like my
Yeah.
parents were like, "You're on your own, so good luck,
Yeah.
Godspeed." So I then was a personal assistant for a woman. I thought this is great. The company that I had been interning for said that it would be a good opportunity, would open doors. So I had no connections in New York City. My parents are amazing, but no fashion, beauty, advertising connections. And so I'm like, this will be great. And I worked with her for a couple of years, and she was lovely. And it was kind of Devil Wears Prada vibe, but if the boss was really nice, but still had a very demanding schedule. So I did that for a couple of years, and then she went on maternity leave. And the agency that I had interned for was looking to hire somebody temporarily to oversee, they'd won the Maybelline business for Fashion Week production. So I think I was probably like the 50th person they called. I felt very underqualified for this role, but they just won the business. So like, hey, do you want to come on and oversee all of the production for Maybelline's fashion shows in New York? And I thought, great, I have time. I was looking for a new opportunity. So I did that. And I really hit it off with the global head of communications for Maybelline. And so a few months later, I reached out to her, told her I'd loved working with her. A couple months later, she hired me full time. So I went into Maybelline. And it was a great opportunity because it was global communications. Maybelline is the #1 cosmetic company in the world. And so just the amount of people you come in to interact with was amazing. And working with people from so many different places was, I found, very rewarding. And it was a great place to I had a boss who appreciated what I brought to the table, which was unconventional thinking, a lot of creativity, and just let's try this, or I'm seeing this happen. Can we test this out? And she was very open and receptive to that. So by the time I left Maybelline 6 years later, the shoes I filled, she wrote press releases. That's it. That's all that girl was doing. When I left, we were doing like content and photo shoots with our spokesmodels. We had signed almost an entire new roster of spokesmodels like Adriana Lima and Gigi Hadid. We were doing significantly more shows during New York Fashion Week. We were doing really cool designer partnerships, a front row strategy, shows around the world. Like, I was given the opportunity to help transform what the brand was doing, and that was very exciting. And Clarence saw that I was doing that, and then they were hiring a new role to head up their communications department, and found me and tapped me, and it's been great ever since.
Let's define the difference between communications and PR and advertising. It's all kind of like intertwined, but how would you differentiate them?
First, I would say it's the sexy sliver of the marketing pie. So it's all the fun stuff. It's kind of like ballet, though. You have to make it like effortless, even though like your feet are bleeding, you're not eating, and you're tired and you're dehydrated. It's kind of like that, but it looks like effortless. PR is very much, you're on the front lines, and it's a lot of like unseen work. And at the end of the day, you have to look glamorous and pretty. I would say communications is the new role of PR. I think like PR, people have a stigma associated with you write press releases. And so when you say PR, it seems like you're very confined into like a very small bubble. When you say communications, it sort of opens up all of those other lines of communications and work that I would say truly is PR, just doesn't have that. PR didn't do its best job at PRing itself and communicating what PR is. Communications really is all touch points. So if you have something on social, if it's a spokesperson, if you're, even like down to strategically putting two people in a photo op, it's PR, but it's also communications, and it's how are you blowing that photo up? And did somebody get behind the scenes of that they're posting on TikTok? And did you feed like the professional recording of that to like E-News, like a podcaster where they also on the red carpet talking about that moment after? Like there's so many ways that you can communicate, and communications just sort of is the broader scope that all of these kind of new terms that we didn't have before really fall into.
If that makes sense. Yeah, no, this makes total sense. If I ask you 5 skills that you need to have to be a part of this industry, but let's not think about the basics, like, be consistent, like what comes to your mind that like you have to really, I think attention to detail is definitely a requirement.
Definitely. I think attention to detail, you've nailed it. And details that like numbers are important, but also very detail oriented with people notice the details. So if you throw an event or you have a photo op or something, like people will notice. Like think of Blake Lively and Gigi Hadid on the carpet. Brilliantly done on that red carpet to promote the new film, right? Red and yellow. In the film, it's all red and yellow. They themed it. It's Friends. That is so well orchestrated, but that's a detail. Those are very, very detailed things that like you might think, oh, just look cute on the red carpet. No, we're going to match. We're going to specifically have 2 best friends, and we're going to wear like red and yellow. Like those things are what make for really good PR. Like you can do PR and you can check off the boxes and it's fine, but details, I think creativity is huge. You need to be a super creative thinker. I think you need to be a fast worker. Like you need to see something and be able to activate on it. Ooh, I have two others. Let's see.
I
I would
remember.
say,
I'll jump in here. When
yeah.
I was working as a makeup artist, when I was in New York, I was a makeup artist, and I really wanted to work at Fashion Week, like do makeup behind stage, backstage, and all that. And I was assisting a lot of these big makeup artists, and they told me you just have to learn how to act fast under pressure. And I never really felt that until I started working backstage, because they just like throwing models at you, and like you're supposed to be doing this type of look, and you're supposed to be, it's like so chaotic back there. But what you need to do is just like be calm and just do everything you can do and be very adaptable. I think that's what I learned learning backstage, working backstage.
I think adaptable is a great word because it changes, right? If you operated under the same, how you did PR 5-10 years ago, it's very different. And you can't just be like, I've been doing this. Like you have to be able to adapt. And you need to really, really be into what motivates people. I think PR is really a lot of psychology and like sociology, like how people will interact, how they will receive your message, what will excite them, what do they care about, what they not care about. And that it's not really a spoken thing, but it's very, you have to really understand what motivates people.
So what would you, not to be like too into your PR communication secrets, but what do you think motivates people nowadays to like buy a beauty product? Because obviously Clarins has been on the market forever, and like people know it, they trust it. But with all these new brands coming out, every celebrity has a makeup line. Like how do you differentiate yourself and like still stand out as the leading brand?
I think a lot of it is changing where people's eyeballs go. The good thing with Clarins is the products are so high quality. When people try them, they love them. And then we're loyal. They love it. They love the brand. So it's just a matter of like making sure that they see the product. So for me, it's okay. This is when I first stepped into the role, we were mostly doing just like paid media and partnering with just a handful of creators, and that was it. And now, like, we've done a lot of other tests, we've done a lot of different things, and we put our product into hands of people that have bigger audiences, that have a larger reach, that have like loyal fans, and just significantly more of them. So there's a better chance that you're going to see a Clarins product now that we're reaching a lot of different creators than if we just continue to run an ad on YouTube. Like you might see it, you might be in our target demo, but like expanding what we're doing on social, expanding with creators, and now we're expanding into podcasts. I think it just opens up doors so that you see us. And expanding, retailer visibility too. So you'll find us more in Sephora. When I started, we weren't really present in Sephora. We're on Amazon. Like there's more places to also discover the brand.
I have to say the lip oils are my absolute favorite. The chocolate one you recommended is been on my rotation. I'm currently wearing the lavender one. I love them during the day when I put like a lip pencil and I just put an oil. Most of them are either like a little bit tinted or kind of clear, but I love them.
My God. This is the one I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling kind of that Bratz
Yes.
vibe.
Is that the
Not
perfector?
Brat, but Brat. This is a perfector. It's clearly been very used.
You told me that you use the clear one before you go to bed, and now it's just in my bedroom, in my bathroom when I'm doing my evening skincare. Like that's my go-to.
I love scents before. So it's like the vanilla, and then I always put a little perfume before I go to bed, and I feel like it sends you off to sweet dreams.
So when we're talking about your days in New York, how is dating in New York? It was like an Olympic sport, people sometimes say, since
Oh, I think New York, dating New York. I ended up single, so I don't know. We can say when I was in New York, Tinder launched, which was like pretty exciting. Like at the time, like when I moved to New York, like nobody had dating apps. People would like maybe go on Match.com, but it was like for older, desperate people.
Like for
or
weird
like
people,
eHarmony.
kinda.
You're like, oh, what is this? I don't want to be on that. And then I remember when Tinder launched, I actually matched with Sean. I matched with Sean like the first year I had Tinder, and
Wait,
he lived
Sean,
in
who's
LA.
Sean?
Sean Rad, the founder of Tinder. We matched
No
on Tinder.
way.
And it was funny because I remember like my roommates were getting it. And so I'm like, fine, I'll get Tinder and like, let's see what this is all about. And then all of a sudden swiping and Tindering became a verb, and like people were doing it everywhere. It kind of caught like wildfire. And this is when Tinder was the only option. And so it was like super cool at the time. And I actually ended up meeting Sean like a year later. He lived in LA. We met a year later for like brunch, and I had all these business ideas. And
You're like, I'm going to
anyways, it
use
was
the
really
app, but I want to
fun.
get to the founder.
I know exactly. We just happened to match. So that was perfect. But it opened up so many doors. And I think like we learned a lot from like the entrance of dating apps where I could go on a date. I did one time, I went on a date every single day of the week with a different guy, most of them from Tinder. And you're sort of like thinking, what is this world? Is this good or bad? Like, it's great
Mhm.
that I'm meeting all of these guys, but there's also no sticking powder. We could meet so many, and it's like the curse of too many options, which I
Yeah.
think already New York City had. And then you throw in Tinder where people could just swipe to their heart's content. And you're like, and then you could all of a sudden everybody had like 5 different dating apps. And it was too much. And I also feel New York City specifically attracts people that are very career focused,
Mhm.
which makes it hard when you cannot multitask with your time. So then you're very, let me focus on myself and my career, and your relationships kind of like take a backseat, which is one of the reasons I moved, because I didn't want to be in that kind of dating environment.
hmm I remember when I was dating in New York, I was in my early 20s and it was so fun. It was like you can meet a different type of person every single day, but I think also you learn so much about yourself. Like you learn what you like, what you dislike. You know that like you're never going to go on a date with an artist or something. Like maybe that's
Yeah.
just not your vibe. Do you remember any like crazy experiences you had in New York that you can share with our listeners that are like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I'm like, I need to write a book. I've had so many like
I
crazy
know this is
dates.
your first. You
Like,
let's start with the
start
podcast.
here. Let's see, what's like a really good one? I should have had like one teed up for you, really.
What do you think? Okay, until you remember one, what do you think about like dating apps nowadays? Like, are you still you're not in a relationship right now? I think you told me
I'm
that.
not in a relationship. I have dating apps. I don't use them like I did. I feel like I kind of got a little, I don't know what the word is, not fatigue, but just like a little like there's
Overwhelmed,
so
maybe.
many. It is a little overwhelming. Then I feel like your energy shifts, and instead of okay, like I could meet somebody on the street corner or whatnot, then your energy is always like focused on like the guys in your little bubble on your app. And are you guys having a good conversation, and like kind of like that world versus like opening your eyes out to the wild. So I feel like I have like a good balance of like meeting men in the wild and going out with guys I meet in the wild. And then some guys that I don't think apps are bad, but I think like you can find success on the apps. But I think too generationally, like people that grew up on the apps, from what I've read and heard, now they're sort of like, okay, like Gen Z like doesn't like the apps. They really want to do what I feel
Oh,
like
I
is
missed
old
that
school, like
part.
speed dating. And you're like,
I
okay.
didn't know they're like not into dating apps anymore. I missed that part.
No, they're into speed dating now, and like things in real life. They grew up with dating apps. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
even imagine starting my dating life on an app. Like I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that would have done to me at 16. It had to be a bit
It's like
overwhelming.
it's very. I think it's also. I mean, with social media in general, like it's such a big hit to your confidence. Like imagine you match with somebody and then 2 days later you see he unmatched you, or like it's just that you feel very replaceable and you don't feel like you are. They're not going for you; they're just going for whoever. And I remember when I posted my viral no coffee walk date video that kind of put me on the map as this like high maintenance dating influencer. I posted a video saying that you shouldn't accept a coffee or a walk as a date. And everybody was like attacking me. And I mean, there's a lot of people who were like, yeah, of course not. But the side that was attacking me and saying that that's like crazy. Why would you go on a dinner date with a stranger? And it then occurred to me that people are meeting people just like, they're strangers. They're not even considering dating in real life and like meeting somebody, becoming friends, and then maybe becoming something more. People are just so automatically thinking, okay, dating apps. They don't even consider something else. And then you are going to potentially miss out on somebody really great in person that you're just like ignoring.
No, I totally believe that. And by the way, I did see that, and my philosophy is exactly the same. I will not go on a dating I'm like, I will say no. Like
Yeah.
that's your level of investment. I'm
Yeah.
out.
Do you have any other, let's say, red flags or maybe something that's like an absolute no? I remember that story with that guy with the bee situation. Please, you need to share that one. But tell me, like, do you have any like total non negotiables? Or what is your absolute no no in dating?
For me, a guy who only talks about work, having gone through the New York where they're just obsessed with their jobs and making money. I'm like, I'm to a point where like, that's nice, but that's definitely like not my priority. So I want somebody who like is good about balancing family with work or personal relationships with work. I also am not okay with a guy that I think every person would say this is somebody who can't communicate. I think so. One of my friends, and somebody I work with too, his name is Tyler Cameron. I would say, is probably one of the more eligible bachelors in
Wait, I
America.
was on his podcast.
He's great, right?
Yeah. He's great. Yeah.
I will call him. I called him last week, didn't even ring a full ring, and he answers the phone. He could definitely not answer the phone call on like less than a first ring or not even pick up. I'm like, okay, the whatever guy who you're stressing out about is not at the level of eligibility of the Tyler, and he won't return your call. Like, that's a no-go. Like, that's no quality. Like, you just don't need somebody like that in your life. You need somebody who will respond.
Well, yeah. What do you think about guys who can't like get back to you? That they're so busy, like they can't respond. They need a full day to respond to your.
For me, I'm like,
message.
definitely I'm busier than you. And if you're busier than me, unless you're Glenn Powell, it's no.
Do you have any like small things that you are like looking at a man, like maybe his nails or like some cute, not cute things, but like some things that you could never like, it would never be a second date if you see that he has, I don't know, that he's like chewing his nails or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I'm like trying to think if anybody had like bad smell or something. No, not really. Oh, I did. I don't like guys who chew gum right before they kiss you. I think that that's just, I know, I understand like the mint thing, but then it's still in their mouth. And like that for me, I'm like, you should have learned by now. That's gross.
I recently posted a video of superficial things that attracted me to my boyfriend. And I will tell you the things that were mentioned. Number one was he had an Aesop soap in his bathroom. And I was like, wow.
Oh, I saw this video.
I was like, he wasn't like preparing the soap for me. Like him and I met through a mutual friend. So we were like at their apartment, like it was a big group. So I was like, wow, I never met a man that has an Aesop in his bathroom. That was the first thing. Then he would always pick me up in a nice Uber. Like if we were going out, it would be like a nice little, Uber XL. It wouldn't be when it's just nice to get like picked up in a really nice car. Then he didn't have, his TV was installed like in the TV. I don't know. His TV was installed in the TV. His TV was installed in the wall and like his wires were inside. And I was like, wow, this just seems so mature. And sometimes then I asked my followers, like, what are some superficial things, quote unquote, that you're attracted by, and some girls were like, when a guy has a proper pair of bed sheets, when they have a bed frame. And I feel like nowadays, I mean, hopefully men are like stepping it up, but some guys are like inviting you over and they don't even have a bed frame.
I mean, I feel like that hopefully is the younger I tend to date younger, which is like kind of funny, but I love a guy who prepares something. Like there's nothing worse than a guy who's like, so like, what are you in the mood for? What do you want to do? In the very early stages of dating, like come up with a plan. Like I'm pretty flexible. I like to just go with the flow, but like I want to know that you're like considering something versus like a guy, like I went out with a guy recently and he, found out that like I had these gun lamps at my house and look cute and they're silver. And he's like, well, if you like, do you want to go to the shooting range? So we went to the shooting range. Then we went to this really fun restaurant. We had the whole night planned out. I went out with another guy and he had like made plans with one of those pedicabs for the guy to be outside when we finished our date to like drive us home and pedicab with like fun music. And like, it was just so thought through that you think about that and you're like, wow, that's so thoughtful. Like you really do want to impress me. Like, I feel like so many guys are just like, whatever is convenient for them. And if they're feeling it, cool. But like guys that really like you or want to impress you, like that's the level now. Like that's the level, like you're calling, you're planning, like, your home is in order. It's not just shoveled. Like, when we go back to a guy's place, like I went to this one guy's place on this really funny story. Like I normally would never do this. I had plans to go out with him when I was flying back from New York. We were going to go out that night and my flight was delayed. And I was just so over it. And he's like, let's reschedule for tomorrow. And I was like, oh, that's great. Perfect. Because I wasn't going to get into Austin until about 2:30 in the morning. And then I was like, oh, I could really just use like a pillow right now, a snuggle. And so he's like, well, you can just like come over after. And normally I would never, ever do that. But I was like so tired. I feel like that made me weak. And so he called an Uber over to pick me up at the airport at like, I don't know, 2:30 whenever I landed. And I go to his place. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm walking into. Like, I texted my friend. I'm like, here's like the Uber information. Here's the guy's name. We had some mutual friends. So I felt like he'd be, he
safety first.
Like,
I love that.
If I show up missing, I'm like, blame these people. And like, I get to his place and his place is so clean. It's so organized. I was like, all I want is a shower. He's like, here's your towel. Here's everything. And I was like, and then he made me breakfast the next morning. I'm like, oh, everything was orderly and clean. He was such a grown up. It was so endearing.
Such a grown up.
I could have been killed that night. We don't know.
Yeah. What happened with him?
Still around.
Oh, okay. We love that. I would love to hear the story. When we met, you told me the story about this dude that had like a bee farm or something. What was that?
So I went to this. Austin has, what I love about Austin is it's a very eclectic cast of characters. And so I went to this event and I don't entirely know what I was walking into. And it ended up being like a lot of different entrepreneurs in Austin that kind of had small businesses, very much in like the health, wellness, food space. And I met this guy and I could tell he was looking at me and his body like shifted to look at me. So I'm like, okay, this guy is like definitely like interested. And he approached me after about like 5 minutes and he comes up to me and I'm thinking, okay, he's interested. We start talking and then he says, I'm not dating right now, like pretty proactively sharing this information. And I'm thinking,
so he came to you and he was like, hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm not dating right now.
I'm not dating.
Here I am.
And so I'm thinking like, maybe it's a temporary thing. Like, did you just get out of a relationship or something? He's like, no, I'm just working on myself. I'm like, I think it's great that you're working on yourself, but like, I don't know if I would approach it like this. And then at the end, the thing that was even more confusing is he was like, so can I get your number or can we become Instagram friends? I'm like, for a guy who's not dating, you're sure like putting out mixed signals in the world. And he was around like this guy who had bees and stuff. And so like all of these guys were just, I'm like, there is this thing, I think, in Austin. And I don't know if you see it in Miami. I don't think it's really hit New York yet, where I appreciate men that want to work on themselves, but they kind of take it to that New York extreme where then they're not focusing on anything else. They're only focusing on themselves. And they're like, I'm going to be better. And so I'm like not doing anything. And then it kind of makes them, I think, very self-involved. And then they're just like only worrying about stuff with themselves. And then it's very self-serving and like it's all about them. And I also think that's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be working on yourself to like make yourself more of a team player, a good partner or whatnot. But they kind of become self-involved. And this guy was very, very self-involved. Like to just be acting like this, very self-serving.
Did you guys talk anything? Like, did you guys get in touch or anything like that?
I ran into him at the Soho House in person like a couple of days later. And I was like, this guy again? I'm like, why is this guy here? Luckily, I haven't seen him since. I shouldn't say luckily. We are friends on Instagram still, but
yeah, God bless him. We always like to say that.
God bless.
I just wonder. I mean, I don't wonder. I think that when men say that they're working on themselves, first of all, we love that. We love a guy who's maybe self-aware that they're not where they should be. But I don't think that should be an excuse to not date. You know, maybe that's just like, maybe I mean, I can go super deep now and like, maybe he is scared of being hurt. So that's why he said that. Or like, what is the reason here? Because I mean, you can work on yourself and still be a good partner, because we're never like, I feel like I'm always working on myself. I'm never like not working on myself. And I'm in a relationship. When I met my boyfriend, I was not like 100% happy with my life. I mean, I just feel like that's sometimes an excuse for men, whether or not they just don't want to be in a relationship or they're just scared of committing, because I'm sure men have trauma too. Like, just girls talk about it a little bit more, but men who say that, I feel like that's pretty much just like and it might be the truth, but like, I don't really buy it.
I find it just an excuse to be selfish.
Yeah.
I just, wherever I am in my life, whatever I want to do, I just want to do whatever I want to do. And if it's convenient for me and what's easy and like, oh, you know, like you want to go grab a coffee. Like, it's very that vibe.
Yeah. It's like, It's like I can't meet you tonight. I'm like manifesting. So
I'm like nobody does, like who does that? But there is a sect of men in Austin. They're in this like world, and it's I find it so weird and so
yeah, I
strange. And
need
I'm
to
just
know.
like, I
Okay,
won't
what is the
tolerate it.
difference? Yeah, what is the difference between, so like you were born and raised in Utah, you lived in New York, now you're in Austin. Like when you compare all three cities, how do you compare them, or like what's the
I'm so
similarities?
glad I'm not dating in Utah. That would be the worst. That's like actually the worst place to date. In Utah, if you get married young and you're 20 years old, most girls that I like was friends with in high school got married before we even graduated college. Like that's cute and fun. And I feel like you're both naive enough that it can actually work. It's a very family oriented culture. So it was great. But I wasn't ready to get married
So
until
is it
I
like
went
a
to New
small
York.
time vibe, like you should marry your high school sweetheart and just like live
Or like
happily ever
just get
after?
married young. Like it's very, and I think it's great. It's very like get married young, have a lot of kids, have big families. Like, and I come from a very big family. Like my extended
Hmm.
family is huge, and I think it's beautiful. But I wasn't in that space. I wasn't ready. I'm a very late bloomer, so I just it wasn't there for me. And I wanted to live in New York. Like that's what I wanted to do. And then
Yeah.
thought I'd settle down and have those 5 children, but in Utah, if you kind of pass that getting married young mark, it becomes this very like these poor guys that know me. I don't know if any of them are going to listen, but it becomes this
This is
very
more,
like
this is like 98% women. So I think, yeah, we're good.
um the guys like I know that kind of pass that threshold. I have loving family members that are in this bucket too. It kind of becomes this very Peter Pan syndrome where you kind of get stuck in this. You either got married young or you're just not able to really fully commit. Like it's very hard. I feel like in Utah to like date somebody and get married past like 30 or 35. Like it's a very weird cultural dynamic. So when you and I feel like most people in Utah too don't have a lot of in dating, and this is like men that I've gone out with, don't have a lot of substance. And so there's
Hmm.
not a lot for them to talk about. And I feel like in New York, like you have people that are do a million things a minute and travel to like the far ends of the earth. And so there's a lot that you can kind of speak to. There's not a lot to speak to in my experience with men in Utah. So it's sort of
Hmm.
like feels very superficial. Everybody's gorgeous. Everybody's clean cut, fit, looks beautiful. But like I feel like it's hard to date. In New York, your problem is everybody's obsessed with work.
Hmm.
So if you don't fit into that work environment and, you're not okay with like, being a banker's widow, then it's like very hard to find a relationship because people are just obsessed with their jobs and it's very hard to compete with that. And then in Austin, I feel like
You moved here
it's
when, like 3 years ago during COVID?
2021. I was
Hmm.
a pandemic mover, yeah. But Austin at least it's an eclectic mix. So you get a little bit of everybody, but you also get like listen, I love cowboys. So you get like the cowboy Western look, guys that wear jeans and white t-shirts that is my type. And then you get some of the guys that are like into like entrepreneurs and kind of like, then you get like the guys that like pickleball, and then you get religious guys, you get non-religious guys, you get workaholics, you get you get guys that are obsessed with themselves, you get balanced guys. Like it's a pretty good mix. So I feel like this has been, I think, and they're all like tall, fit, handsome, with mustaches. Like it's you get a good mix here. And I feel like people in Austin have a good amount of experiences, but they're for the most part they're very family oriented, which I like. So it's been the easiest place for me to date.
Hmm. How was it moving for you to Austin? Did you know anybody, or you just like moved on your
I have
own?
one friend and it's so wild. Now we're closer friends. At the time, I'd met him twice
Hmm.
before. In the span of 5 years, I've kind of joked he's kind of my like guardian angel, like big moments in my life. He's kind of been there for it, which is funny, but he reconnected during the pandemic. He had just gotten out of a relationship. So I'm sure I was one of like 100 girls that he texted over Christmas, like, hi, how's it going? I'm single. So I heard from him and he was like telling me I was kind of in a place. I lived remote. I took advantage. Like we could work remote. I'm like, I am leaving New York
Hmm.
City. I'm going to like
Hmm.
live in a bunch of different places and take advantage of the fact that we can work from wherever during the pandemic. And so I was looking for my next space. And so he was telling me Austin, all of his friends from Texas were moving to Austin. It was going to be the new hot place. And I was like, ooh, really? Okay. And so he convinced me, didn't take a lot of convincing, but convinced me to actually buy a condo in his building So that's what I moved, and I got COVID the week I was supposed to move
Oh,
to
wow.
Austin. So my dad and uncle flew to New York, got a pickup truck, and drove my stuff to Austin on this like fun brothers trip, which I will forever
That's
be
cute.
grateful. It was really cute. It actually turned out to be really cute. While I had COVID and I was like in Arizona
Yeah.
recovering from that. So I think that also helped because I didn't have to pack up my stuff and put it in a box and make the move. I think it made the transition easier than like, oh, I'm leaving forever and crying. And, you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
big moves like that can be tough.
Very emotional.
Yeah. But I was fortunate with the situation and everybody kind of not being in New York City. It made it less hard.
The reason I'm asking is because I have girls asking me like, "Oh, I don't know, 33, 5, 7. Like I want to move, but I feel like it's too late for me to do it. I feel like I'm not going to find any friends." Like how did you find I'm very social and I feel like you are as well, but like how did you find your girlfriends or like how did you find your everyday, hangouts?
I think what's hard is people expect instant results. So you expect to move someplace and all of a sudden your new home is perfectly furnished or you're going to have instant friends. And I think it's okay that it takes time to build. My aunt gave me great advice when I was moving to Austin and she's like, you don't have to have your place fully furnished when you move in. Like it can be
Mm-hmm.
a little bit at a time and like find something you love and then buy it and build your home. And I think it's the same thing with friends too. You don't have to instantly have like the 10 best friends you have if you are, living in Utah. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to like also spend time alone, take time to develop friends, really think about what kind of friends you want in your new life. I really appreciated having a clean slate where I can start very, very fresh. I don't have like, yes, I had my friend slash neighbor, but we weren't really that close. Like I had to kind of
Mm-hmm.
beg him. I was like, hey, do you have any girlfriends you want to throw my way? Like kind of like sift out. I think it's okay to start fresh. And then starting fresh, I think allows you to be more vulnerable and like open up a little bit more. And like, I think it's easy to have a safety net of old friends. And it's not bad per se, but I think clean slate, starting fresh with like where you currently are. I have a lot of friends that I went to high school with and we don't have anything in common. And it's okay that we're friends on Instagram and we don't really hang out anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted friends that made a lot of sense for me in like this point in my life. And I'm fortunate to work in an industry that is very social. So a lot of my friends were creators and influencers. And I, became closer friends with them as I sort of started doing more in Austin, which I really appreciated. I think it's okay that they're not like friends from years ago. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Like they're around and we can go play pickleball together or like go, for walks or, go do stuff. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And it's a good mix of people, at least in Austin. And I feel like there's other cities that are kind of like this. It is a magnet for people that want a second start. And
I love that.
most of my friends that are here moved here as adults. They're not from Austin. And whether they were moving from another city like New York City or they had been divorced and they kind of wanted a clean start, there are a lot of like single adults that are here, men and women. And or maybe they wanted to start a business or, I have some friends that wanted to start a podcast. Like it's a great clean slate. And so I think if you can find a place that makes you happy, an environment, like a home living situation that makes you happy, you're going to find people that are very like-minded. Like I'm in my 30s and I wanted to hang out with people that also wanted to be in Austin intentionally
Mm-hmm.
and made the move for various reasons. And I feel like you'll find your hive, if you will, because you're all like you are intentionally choosing to be somewhere. So if you feel like you're ready for a move, I would just do it. And then you're going to find people. I have a lot of friendly neighbors and my neighbors were my only friends when I first lived here. And that was okay. I think you could be okay with having a different friend group too.
This is all so on point. Like everything that you were saying right now, I was like, this is exactly how I feel about like I moved to Miami during the pandemic and it was intentional and it was almost like always have a fresh start. Like I moved from Croatia to New York, then I moved in New York, I moved like 15 times, then I moved to Miami and it's but what I love about moving to a new place is like you can find friends that are actually aligned with who you are and who you want to be. Because if you are in a small town surrounded by your same friends from high school, like you don't have anything in common anymore, but it's just like you're kind of forced to hang out with them because if you don't, it's kind of rude. But when you move to a new city, it's like you're just free to do whatever you want. So like this was so on point what you just said.
I think it's so beautiful, and I would recommend it to anybody. I think it's so great. I also think it kind of allows you, when you start with a clean slate, you can kind of really evaluate. They say I don't know the omnibus they, but you're the sum of your five closest friends. So I always kind of try to take stock of who I'm spending my most time and energy with, and like, are those people I want reflected in myself? Because if those are the people that are my like go-to call, then I'm like, am I glad? Are they influencing me for the better? And I feel like I have a good mix of, I have a girlfriend who motivates me to think creatively and do above and beyond work stuff, and we're super collaborative, and I absolutely adore her, and we energy check, and we even talk about like dating and guys, and it's like she's very in this like very like always upward mobility, and I love that. I have a friend that challenges me to try things way out of my comfort zone, and it's great because I need to do it, and I didn't realize how like in a comfort zone I was, and she's like, just do this, just try this, and like, not that she's like the devil on my shoulder, but kind of almost like, you wouldn't normally do this, but just do it. And I'm like, she pushes me in like the best way possible. And I have a girlfriend who helps me make like good life decisions, like you should, and get an investment portfolio, and like you should buy property, like those kinds of things where like pushes me to be an adult. A friend who like keeps me like really in line with like religion and like making good choices. And then of course I chalk my brothers up to my last friend, and they keep you humble. There's nothing I do rarely that impresses my brothers. So it keeps me very like humble. It's good.
Yeah, you gotta have variety.
Why did you do that? This is not cool. What are you doing? Why did you take another like 15th picture? So I feel like it's always good to take stock of who's influencing you. Yeah. And if somebody's like causing too much drama in your life, or like always having a negative story, always complaining, like, we cut them off that right away. Like, cut why? Yeah. And I've had friends that I've taken the like horrible dating advice from, and I look at them, I'm like, why did I take that advice? It was absolutely awful advice. And I'm just like, I gotta be really mindful of who I like actually share stories with, and whose advice I really want to be taking, and not take bad advice, and really make sure like I'm like talking to like girlfriends that are really good girlfriends, that want the best for me.
Honestly, one of the reasons why I started my podcast and my page and just sharing dating advice, not that I'm like a dating coach or anything like that. I just feel like I went through a lot in my life, and I can understand why certain people do something. And I remember when I was going through like a bad relationship or something, I would talk to my friends, and they would be like, oh, but you're lucky. Like, there's so many worse guys out there. Like, you should just like, close your eyes and just pretend. Like, that's horrible advice. And I know that sometimes people you're surrounded yourself with, maybe they're giving you bad advice, but they don't, like, you just have to see, are they in a relationship that you want to be in? Like, would you just swap places with them? Like, that's a question you really need to ask yourself. There's one question that I finish every episode with, and that is, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, what great advice. To not stress.
Okay, I love that.
I would say, like, when you're young, or like when I was young, it was always like stressing about like, am I going to get that job? Am I going to do this? Is this going to work out? And I feel like hindsight is 2020, and it worked out significantly better than I could have planned. And so always stressing about, if like I was stressing about like getting married when I was 20, like no, I would not be stressing out about getting married when you're 20. I would not even worry about it. I just feel like there's so much cause for like anxiety and stress, and it has to be so perfect right now. You have years to make it perfect. And like, I think being open to just like all the experiences along the way is like, you're getting to places, like that's how if you're open versus like stressed about like, I've got to get this right, I've got to be in this relationship has to work out, he's the man of my dreams. Like, if you don't stress about it, I feel like you're going to be much happier. And then again, looking 10 years later, you're like, why did I stress out about that? Why was I worried about that one thing? You don't need to hold on to that anxiety. I would think just relax a little.
I love that. I usually say if it's not going to matter in the next 5 years, you shouldn't stress more than 5 minutes about it. And easier said than done, obviously, but sometimes we need to remind ourselves to that. But Melissa, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. If you can share, where can everybody find you, your socials, or where they can connect with you, maybe just share all the connection points.
Yes, I love getting a good DM. I feel like that's great. Then I can see your face and kind of like what you're up to. So definitely like send me a DM on Instagram or on TikTok. I'm there. You can also, there's my emails in my bio. So you can also shoot me an email. I get so many emails. I would prefer a DM if possible.
Yeah, just share your Instagram so they can find you.
At Melissa Reidhead. Reidhead.
Okay, lovely. And if somebody wants to get a job at your firm, where can they find you? Like LinkedIn, or like where do you guys post like opportunities?
Our recruiting team is amazing. They found me. So I would say like Danielle is great. Yeah. But we're definitely on LinkedIn. So all job openings are posted on LinkedIn under Clarence. You can also send me a note. Generally, again, things that are available are posted. I do have other connections, whether, if you want to just like talk about future opportunities, that, maybe something's coming down the pipeline. Again, sometimes it's great to have an informational interview. I always value informational interviews. It's just a way to network, and then you're top of mind for a future opportunity. So I'm always happy to do that. And I have other contacts in like the beauty and fashion world. So, depending on like interests, I'm always happy to kind of like connect different people together.
I love that. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. Thank you. Melissa, this was wonderful. Thank you again for being here. Bougie Bestie, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast so you never miss out. I release new episodes every Friday. If you love Bougie Best Friend, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. Your support means the world and it helps the show grow. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at KOKO Beauty, and you can find Bougie Best Friend on Apple, Spotify, and all other major podcasting platforms. Love you. Bye.